I don't know how many people will join us, but welcome to the Goal 6 call. And I know Eric and Beth have been on the calls before when we've introduced the idea of this proposal for the new call cadence. And I don't know, Katie, have you gotten a chance to see that?
The post-summit strategy proposal?
Yes.
Yes, I just read through it again.
Okay. So how do you all feel about that?
I liked it.
Okay. And more for not specifically goal 6, but I'm going to ask you about dashboard ideas going forward, since I have 3 ESHIP champions on this call. So so first of all, hello, happy Monday. Hope you had a good 4th of July. So I would love to kick off by asking, what are you, well, I don't know, how do I phrase this? Because we just came off of, so I'm still riding on high from the soccer team winning, and I'm trying not to, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm vacillating back and forth between saying the women's national team or just the national team, right? Because it's grating on me.
Why can't we be the default?
Huh?
Why can't we be the default gender?
I know, right? So anyway, I'm extremely happy about that, and proud. So I would love to hear from you, your thoughts about this past patriotic last couple of days.
Yeah, it was awesome. I cried like 3 times between yesterday and today watching the replays of those women winning. It was so inspirational. They're so powerful and cool. And Megan Rapinoe is a total boss. Yeah, I had a great weekend. It's been really, really relaxing post Milwaukee Gathering, post Forward Cities, and then post another meeting that I held in San Francisco in June. So been really leaning into not having a lot on my to-do list, which is really nice for once. And I know that'll change soon. So really trying to just be okay with not having anything to do, which is awesome. Pretty cool. I mean, I have things to do, but very few. Beth?
Yeah, so I saw a picture on the news this morning of her, the boss, when she was a little kid, and in the soccer in the uniform and all that, and her long-term dreams. Sorry, I've got music playing. I don't know why. So anyway, that's very cool. I didn't watch a lot of it. I was with family and hanging out in our beautiful, I wonder if you can see this. Can you see the backyard there?
Nice.
Yeah, we're all going to come visit, Beth.
Yeah, we'll be right there. Hold on.
Yeah, so and yesterday the humidity broke, and it's one of the most beautiful days in the world here today. So anyway, I'm still in a crazy political yucky quagmire of the ecosystem building here, but one day at a time, and I think we're making progress, so that feels good, and I'm very happy to be here with you 3 today. Eric, how about you?
Well, I'm glad to be here too. Let's see quickly on the weekend. So I didn't have a chance to watch the whole game, but we have a thing where we've got a big sort of a jumbotron in our downtown Civic Plaza. So I don't know, probably a couple hundred people gathered downtown yesterday morning to watch, and that's kind of inspiring to use this as an opportunity to bring folks together. So love that. The mayor was there, a couple other folks, well, a bunch of other folks. I was able to see what ended up being the winning goal before we had to go off to 2 other things. But that was a nice, great moment as part of the weekend. I think the other thing that I'll say has been valuable, but isn't something that I've been able to do all that much until recently, is reading. So I'm diving into a couple of, I don't know, semi-scholarly texts right now that talk about complexity and systems and all this other kind of stuff. And that's been, it takes a little bit of effort to get my head into that space, but it's been rewarding when I do. Not sure who else might be on the call, so I will leave the popcorn open.
That would be Tyler. So Tyler, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We were talking about the riding the high of the national team winning the soccer tournament yesterday, and so that's great. Although I'll tell you before you jump in and share your thoughts about that and what else you were excited about the past couple of days, but some other things that came up. So with this lens of patriotism and nationalism that goes around during the 4th of July, there's that fine balance between being patriotic and nationalism or jingoism. And I know there's been criticism of the team because of their very outwardly proud demeanor, which, take it for what it is. I think that we accept it more from men than we do from women. And when women act like excited, athletic champs, then it's not thought of as well. And then there's that whole debacle with the aerial thing. I don't even want to go there. But Tyler, so how was your reaction to the national team and all the things around this weekend, and enjoying anything? Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Hi. Yay, very happy the girls won. I have 2 girls who play soccer, and they were very excited about that. So I always think that's awesome. I think girls should be more patriotic, although I really don't see how the American team doesn't already just blow it out of the water every time. I mean, just with our attitudes and the way that our supporters show up. And I mean, we had the most tickets in France. I mean, plain and simple, per country. It's like, if you support your country, then buy a ticket. So I think that's great. The rest of the stuff, I'm not really paying attention. I've really removed myself from national media, unfortunately. So given the current context and everything else that's going on, I just don't care to have it in my thought process. So it doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. I know it does, and when I can help, I will. But this weekend was very good. We had a lot of rain in Florida, and it's getting hot down here, so had to go to the winter beard. Oh, have you noticed?
Nice.
First time in 3 years I've actually seen my cheeks. So.
Wow. Okay.
Forgot what they looked like.
Well, thanks for sharing your cheeks with us.
There you go. Life's good. Life is good.
So all of you have seen the document about the strategy going forward. So especially because all of you are ESHIP champions, we're working on the communication still to send things out. And like Eric, Andy and I'm not sure about Christina and Lauren, but definitely Andy and I have been delving into this complexity and trying to work out simple set of guidelines to follow so that we can be better at supporting the complexity that goes around this and knowing what. So I was on an interesting call today with Ashoka, which is a global organization, and Christine's still on the call, and we were talking about how there seems to be this push, and I know that you all naturally feel it because you're all doers, this push to get an output. And the past couple of weeks, we've really taken, the ESHIP team has really taken a step back and looked and discussed a lot about complexity in doing, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that. As we move this field forward, particularly because we're talking about introducing people who don't yet know they're ecosystem builders to the community, and how we go about doing that. I know Beth lives in that world where we're trying to infuse into conversations how ecosystem building is integral. And I think that in the past year, I've heard all of us kind of step away from the way that we approach things in saying, oh, industrial age, economic development, archaic, old school, like there's no place for it, to now talking about how ecosystem building is the evolution of, right? So it's being more inclusive and bringing people with us along in the conversation, and introducing them to a new way of looking at things, as opposed to you are doing it wrong, or it's the past, to how to bring people forward. And I think that that's going to be really integral in the work that we do specifically in this goal. So I'm curious about your thoughts about that, because I think that if we talk about things the way we used to, that may not do us well in the work that we're doing going forward. The other part is that if we don't take a minute to sit back before we really dive into creating the tools, then we'll be solving for things that we think are there, and the output will be more important than the input to create a base for all of this. So one of the things that I'll be asking all of you to really look at is, we've got a couple of us who are taking a first glance at interdependencies between the initiatives, and all of you are definitely the people to help in that conversation as well, because without 4.4 and 6.2 working together, right? If without the storytelling and the connected networks and the global awareness in universal support being aligned, it doesn't have to be exact, but if it's not aligned, we're gonna not be productive. So I'm going to start with Eric, because I know he's got another place to go to, and he's been thinking about complexity. So Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's tough to get your arms and all that kind of stuff around it. I mean, I guess, I don't know if it helps. So I'll throw some words on the table, the big words that some folks, talk about. So one way of looking at ecosystems is as complex adaptive systems. We recognize that there's a lot of moving parts, and that each of those parts has, I wouldn't say necessarily a role, but it sort of has this emergent behavior. If you get folks going in a community or a meetup group or whatever, that's not something that any one individual owns, but it sort of starts to move in a direction. And if some of the conversations and DNA that went into it have been useful, sometimes that's positive, and it leads to alignment of activities. But it's really tough to determine that kind of stuff. So knowing that different aspects of what we do, we can't control, and we'll go off into the weeds or whatever. I think being open to that is helpful, and having a better sense of where we might inject ourselves or how we might appreciate those kinds of efforts is I think useful. I'm just blathering, so I'll shut up and I'll hand off to Tyler.
Handing off to me, huh? Thanks, buddy. That was actually pretty good, what you just said. I'm still taking it in. So Celia, what specifically I'm sorry, I'm just confused.
Okay, so there's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So talking about, well, definitely we'll talk about interdependencies after, but I think the first point is that we figure out where we are and the directions that we need to go, and taking just a little bit more time to do that, as opposed to just going and doing,
Yeah.
which is our nature, right? Our nature is to go, okay, let's just do something because we feel that that something needs to come out of it or something needs to be done. And so I think it's taking a moment to pause, and then also in how we bring other people along with us. So the whole talk about industrial age lens and how we look at things, shifting so that we're inclusive.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think I agree that based on the calls that I've been on so far with you, and you've been on way more than I have, but it does seem like while there is definitely everybody wants to start working on something, it does seem like through the conversations and the questions that we're having specific to the initiatives, communication, project management, just the how, right? You know, like this is such a big thing to eat, you know, that we need to start biting from all sides simultaneously at the same time if we have any interest of finishing this cookie, you know. But I think you're right, is making sure that where appropriate, interdependency or interconnections are happening, like you said, you know, 4.4 to 6.2 to 6.3 to back to 1. I think again, project management software and that series of you know, the tiered calls and schedule, I think is going to ensure one, that everybody gets a seat at the table. Two, that we can collect that information and share it with everybody if they don't make it to the table. And three, we'll use that information to create some sort of a plan. Is kind of where my head is right now. So, and I think anything that we can do to support that makes sense. But I do think that there's also things that, as we know, people have already started on, and that's great. You know, I think we need to support them in terms of getting them to completion, especially if what they have is part one of things are waiting on them, if that makes sense. I think we need to support those guys right now. So I think giving them an opportunity to say so before maybe everybody jumps on the next project, if there's a couple that are preliminary or otherwise, I think it'd be great if we had kind of a recruiting call to say, hey, you know, we could really use a push on this and this and this and this. So that's kind of my thoughts. I will popcorn to Katie.
Cool. Yeah, I like the approach. I think the framing of it, you know, trying to be less, not derogatory, but divisive around sort of the way we frame it will just do ourselves better, particularly in communities that maybe are a little more slow adopters of everything that we're talking about, and making sure we show them how it kind of works hand in hand with, and they're probably already doing it, they just don't have a name for it. So really trying to like be supportive of that. And yeah, I think, you know, in terms of the interconnectedness of everything, I think back to our in-person meeting in Denver when we were at the one side of the room where Mike had the big paper all across the room and was like drawing everything up, and we were sort of arguing back and forth about what was connected to what. And I think it's just going to be like sort of this tangled process that we just kind of have to live with and figure it out. And I think the fact that Celia, you and like the Kaufman team are sort of providing an outline and a structure will be helpful for people to show those alignments, but I don't think there's any really way to avoid it. Beth?
Yeah, so the pleasure of going last is everybody kind of covered everything, right? But I think there's a balance between, you know, the early adopters and jumping in and starting to get some stuff done. I think bringing others along is something that's always going to be necessary. We're going to have new people coming on and getting engaged forever, right? And this work is really never ending. It needs to continue in perpetuity, just like every other economic development activity or profession, right? So starting to do and bringing others along as they show interest in certain initiatives and goals, I think is the messy part of mass collaboration that we just have to work together to balance. And I think I'm looking forward to, I think we have our first project call on 6244 tomorrow night. And really looking forward to just starting to frame some stuff up and move along. And again, as new people come on, great welcome. Let's get them up to speed. And how do we do that? Is it a series of videos that we update on a regular basis on the dashboard? Is it every people sign up or raise their hand to be ambassadors? Those of us that have been engaged for longer can, be assigned somehow. Maybe it's automated, I don't know, but new people come on, we spend some time on the phone with them or on Zoom and really get them engaged and move forward. I think it's a one step at a time as we move forward. And I'll throw it back to you, Celia.
So thank you all for your sharing your thoughts. I'm going to be on a call with Christine in a little bit, and we're talking about how we revamp the dashboard so that we can support these efforts. And one of the thoughts that we had, or I had, was that we would put a goal per page so that there would be 7 goal pages, each one respective of one, so that now not all the videos live in one place, but each of the videos for these calls go on the page for that call. The definition goes on there along with the project canvases. So my hope is, if we work this out well, and Christine makes it always look better, is that we attach the project canvas that people are working on and list out maybe the people that are working on them and an update. And then if the canvas changes as project canvases evolve, then we would update. But we're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can make it commentable so that other people who aren't working on the project can leave comments without altering anything, because my want and desire is that the project teams themselves are in charge of what they do with the project, right? It's not for us to do anything with. It's for the community to maybe share some input and some ideas, but the project needs to be the project. Does that make sense? Are there any so I like the idea. Tyler just wrote in, Eric, that we've given them an email form link to make suggestions. It's trying to figure out how we share that, like sharing suggestions. And sometimes what happens, the best part of collaboration comes from some suggestions that may inspire people to do something else, right? So if you see somebody suggest something on an idea and it doesn't necessarily work for the idea or can live in another rendition, does that make sense?
Yeah, so communication and the open conversation. Somebody puts an idea up, people start to go back and forth on it. That sounds good. A solution's made. If they submit a form, one person sees it, we have to repost it. We have to, okay. I'm gonna.
Right. So it becomes a gatekeeper.
Draw my idea.
Okay. So I love it. I want it to be more open source, and maybe it is where there's a link to a commentable Google Doc or something like that, where I mean,
it'd be hard to give them commentable directly on the beta dashboard and/or a doc, because they would have to identify themselves, and you'd have to create like a profile to the beta dashboard. Now that's a whole thing. But what if we just use the Facebook, the ESHIP community?
So the other part that Andy has talked about is that we list the project canvases. So we share the album of the project canvases. We'll wipe out the email addresses because we don't want that to just be out there in Everland. But Eric, do you have something you want to share?
Hey, thanks. So I think for sort of a user-centered design kind of thing, I think designing what it is we most want, just talking about the kind of the need for logging in and that other kind of stuff, while those details are going to be important down the road, I think if we figure out what would we most want in this system, confident that there are plugins or other kinds of tools that we can use in order to make that easier. So if we need people to make comments, then those to be associated with the unique user ID, we can do that. I wouldn't worry so much about that, potential problem now. I'm going to jump on the road in a minute, so it's mostly a listen mode from me from here on out. But thanks very much.
Thank you. So one of the things that we talked about also, just so you know, that talking about the things that Christina and I support and do, it is really the base of creating opportunities to strengthen the relationships that's around all of us in the community. So creating an environment where those foster, and then we find that one of the most important roles that we have is assisting in visibility, so that you all know what's going on. You don't have to be on all 7 or 8 calls, and then that we can share the things that are going on with the things that are happening around the foundation, so that you're aware of the things. So visibility, so fostering relationship, community, and the visibility are paramount, right? The hope is that we can create some alignment. So the alignment is around the things that you can see where those bonds and those connections are, the interdependencies. The rest of the coordination and collaboration we have less to do with. So I know that there was a discussion about platforms and project management tools and things like that. While it could be done, it really isn't the Kauffman ecosystem building initiative, and projects should live based on the project teams if there's a way that we can support in some way, but we can't mandate people to work together on the same platform, nor should we. It's just not in the purview of the roles that we play. And you don't need me as a gatekeeper. I shouldn't be that. I should just be. So I've actually adopted using the word scaffold. So what I see Christine and I doing is that we help create the scaffold to help support the structures that are being built by all of you. So does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So in the idea of sharing the canvases and having people chime in, we thought that the Facebook page, because it's a more general audience and a place where you can refer back. I still think that that there's a place for an old school forum, and I don't know how familiar you are with forums, community forums, but like Flyer Talk is a good example of a community forum where there's different sections for each one, and you can pull up the thread and check back. I think Slack is not as user-friendly when it comes to things like that, unfortunately, and I don't know what it would take to maintain a website that has that kind of forum, but I feel like that's a more user-friendly for ongoing discussions about certain topics or threads than Slack is. So I don't know your thoughts on or experiences in that. And I have this great Springsteen community that I was a part of, so that's my example of a forum, right? Does anybody have any experiences in forums or have one in their community?
Not really.
No?
I've used them in the past, but not for anything like this, more for other topics and stuff. I do know, I have a friend who's run a forum on Toyota trucks since the 90s. It's one of the bigger ones, actually, and he complains to me every time I talk to him about it and the people on it and the amount of work he has to do to filter comments, to warn people, to maintain civility. I don't know that that applies to this crowd. I'm just saying. I don't find that Slack would be limited in giving us the ability to have an initiative-focused page, especially if we included a link to that Slack on the bottom of the website pages. To say, hey, if you'd like to join us for communications, we have 4.4 Slack, click here. You know, and now you can come on and say, hey guys, I was looking at this document, there's this thing here, can we talk about that? I think it might be, I don't know, because if you have a forum, then I can only find that forum if I know about that forum or if somebody tells me, I guess. And, you know, so it's, so much is going into Slack, so many people are using it, you know, et cetera. It's, you know, they say that this is the year of consolidation, not invention, you know. I know a person who has six apps on their phone. 6, and she is the happiest person I know. She has worked her way down to, I need this to live and I don't care, you know. So yeah, so, you know, and she's a developer. She's a web developer. Like, she builds apps and she has 6 on her phone. And so to me, introducing something new on top of everything we're already doing may be counterproductive, but I don't want to say no, because they do give you a certain level of free speech, you know, inside of the community, you know, to say, hey, listen, if you want to participate, here's the general rules, but, you know, push it. And, you know, so I guess I could support either one, you know, but I do still think that we need that hierarchy in Slack in general. You know, do we use it as the primary or not? I don't know.
Beth?
I don't really have an opinion either way. I mean, Slack seems, I don't really understand, I guess, the difference between a forum and the Slack channel. I do have a hard time with having a lot of different places to go look for things. So, and maybe Slack notifications aren't as good as they should be. I don't know, but I guess I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah, I agree that like fewer things you have to pay attention to is always better. So if the community's already used to using Google Docs and Slack, like any way we can make it fit within those, I think we'd probably get better engagement.
Yeah, I think that I hear you. I don't want to put in a new place, right? I definitely, if we have a forum, it should live on the dashboard or be connected to the dashboard so that it's like a one-stop shop for projects. So what I don't see in something like the Toyota site that Tyler was talking about is probably more like the Springsteen page that I was on, or a friend of mine was on an IKEA page. So people doing IKEA projects would go and flyer talk, so that each one has a section. And the only thing that it has over Slack is if you don't catch that Slack message that somebody posted something, and you come into the Slack channel a month later, you don't know that conversation ever took place, and you can't search it, or you wouldn't even know where to search it, is the challenge. So, oh, there was this great article somebody posted a while back. I think it's on, you know, this Slack channel, or you don't even know that the discussion ever took place, kind of thing. So I guess that's where something like a flyer talk forum is conducive in my mind, but then it does take that. So yeah, it's I think when you're talking about the beta dashboard commenting, if we link it to a running Google Doc where the team will update their progress and you can comment, that makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. It's like when we posted when the Kauffman Foundation posted the playbook.
Yeah.
People comment on the playbook.
Yeah, that's
right?
what we did. That's how we worked it out. Mm-hmm. You highlight it. You say, I think it should say this instead. They can respond directly to that comment. They can hit accept, and Google Docs just does the change. Right. Or you can hit deny. So
I think So what you're talking about highlighting and commenting on the Google Doc,
Yeah.
it should, then the administrator or the owner becomes the project team administrator owner, not me or Christine.
Yes.
Right? Because the
Yeah.
project is the project.
The project is the project. Yeah.
That's the hope. All
Yeah.
right.
I like the scaffolding idea. I think personally, if you're asking me, there should be an ESHIP champion or two assigned to all 7 goals, and then somebody, as captain and co-captain, so they can report back and provide you the information you need, as well as pass on to their group. I think every initiative should have one person, who's reporting to the goal captains, and then so that way the information flows up and then can very uniformly flow back down, to everybody, because we can take a look at it all first and say, this sounds right, da da da, okay, great, and then present it, right? So maybe on the beta dashboard, maybe we have a link at the bottom to the Google Doc for that initiative. Instead of having the commenting on the website, they can say, if you would like to add, if you have something to say, about, you can either click here and go to the Slack channel and engage us to communicate, or you can click here and go to the Google Doc and put in your change.
Right.
That would be nice on the bottom, because now I can engage on the communication going forward, and I can do my thing real quick off to the side, and if it's something that's obvious, the captain can go, I appreciate it, but I don't think that's appropriate or whatever. And if it is appropriate, then they can pass it off to the team, right? And say, hey, we've had a couple submissions for changes. What do you guys think? They all say yes, and it goes up.
So it should.
I'm trying to envision your.
Right, but it should live with the project teams themselves, as opposed to I think ESHIP champions for support purposes, but not necessarily being a checkpoint or a check-in.
I don't mean a checkpoint. What, a guide? I mean, we're the people who've been here 2017, right? Like, who else is going to answer the questions better than the people that have been here since day one, right? It's my thought. So, I mean, it's a volunteer thing, of course. You got to want it.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my hesitation is, there's twofold. I think that's like a lot of responsibility in like both in time, but also in like my conception of what is appropriate might be totally different than someone else's. I guess that's why you have 2 people. But Tyler, I do like the idea of like presenting, having like them be the guide to present them to a bigger group of people. So maybe rather than having ESHIP champions cull the suggestions, instead we just present all of them, unless they're like totally off the wall or stupid or whatever, then we can just sort of like identify that like, that's not going to happen, sorry, and like move it along. But, maybe I would say that's not going to happen very often, but more.
Yeah, I don't mean to censor. I just mean to, if I'm not going to volunteer for Goal 4, it's because I'm passionate about Goal 4, and I think I know as much as I can about Goal 4 to help steer the conversation, right? Not lead it, not make it happen, but just be there for it, be a resource for what's happened so far. If somebody brings up an idea that we've already gone through, like literally gone all the way through and made a resolution, somebody says, why don't we do this? It's very easy to just go, okay, hold on, I'm gonna pull you off to the side here. We already did that.
Yeah,
that kind of situation. I don't mean a titled position with a term on it or anything else. It's just, hey, who's got the time, who wants to do it? I think it would help. And then Cecilia, you mentioned something about Slack. If you leave and come back, Slack will actually start you where the last conversation you read at in that.
Right.
Okay, so it's not impossible, but if you ignore it, okay.
And then some people, though, they don't reply on the thread, they just reply. So it's an ongoing conversation.
Oh, it bounces off.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to it just doesn't stream that way. So that's
I get what you're saying.
The challenge.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. So you don't contain the conversation in a thread. You have this ongoing channel discussion. So, so that's, but that's okay, because I think we share best practices and model to create. So that's where we're going. And so speaking about volunteerism, and I'm so appreciative of all of you, my super volunteers, is on these calls coming up, starting next month. So we should have the newsletter that goes out to all the attendees will be going out in the next week or two. They have to go through different channels. So not only do we have to kind of come up with them and compose them, but then they have to go through certain channels when they're going out on a Kaufman email. So that also slows down the communication piece, but also because this communication was it's so important to set the tone of how we go forward and to also be very open and communicate as much as we can in the way that we go forward. So that's why this takes a lot longer. Plus we're influenced by the things that transpired on calls and at the summit to try to make sure that we have a great message for everyone that answers questions, right? We don't want to send out an email and then have all these people come back and go, wait, what did you say? Like, that's not what I heard. So there's an email that'll go out for all the attendees. And there's an email that goes out to the communication for the greater Kaufman community that signed up on the newsletters about what happened. We will probably see an influx of new people. And with that proposal of the new call update form. So anybody who's working on a project will report and update, and so the community knows about the projects that they're working on. And then we, as or myself on behalf of the foundation and the ESHIP team, will share any updates and information that I have to let people know in the community. And then what we wanted to do was curate some kind of peer learning, because there should be a value to you besides the fact that all of you like getting on the call and seeing each other, because you know we've bonded and created a community of people that care about this stuff. Not that you didn't care before, but now you have other people to geek out with. So we wanted to create some kind of value add. So in goal number 6, we will need a couple of people to help think about the content that you would like to have on this call. If there's a content expert, if there's a talk, a video, whatever that we can share, some 10 or 15 minute kind of thing. And then from there, we have a discussion with the community. So there's a lot of tools around Zoom where we can break off into groups and come back. If you wanted to have discussions, I'm going to have to work on how I do that. But while I have that learning curve, think about which goals you are passionate about helping to help curate content for. And we'll partner with other people who come on the call that have that kind of passion and interest. They don't necessarily have to have the ESHIP champion title to do that. And of course, we're still opening up those nominations for added ESHIP champions. There have been a couple that have been suggested. So, so think about those things and think about which goals that you want to be involved in. So what other questions, comments, ideas do you have?
I really love the peer learning value add thing. I think that was some of the feedback that I heard from the ESHIP Summit was like the give-get ratio is a little bit off for attendees. And I think I heard that a couple times. And I think that like hearing from entrepreneurs is incredibly valuable and kind of exciting. And they always have such beautiful stories. But I think as ecosystem builders, it would be really exciting to hear from people like us who are doing this kind of work to understand their process. And maybe it's around a specific goal or just generally. But I think as ESHIP, as people in the ESHIP community, as the practitioners of ecosystem building, that is something that would be really exciting for me. And I know for other people too. So I just really like that.
Beth or Tyler, do you have something? No?
I've said enough.
You since when? Beth, what are your thoughts? What would you like to see on this call?
I really want to see, I like the giving the updates on the projects. That's why I'm torn, because I want to be on every flipping call, because I want to understand what projects are being talked about, worked on, and how they relate to each other. That's kind of my superpower, is making those connections and making sure that the right knows what the left is doing. So knowing and having that stuff updated on the dashboard, if that's going to be up to us as project teams, and or if you're going to be buried in that work, I don't think so. But just having access to that information on a regular basis will be key to moving these things forward as efficiently as we can in this messy mass collaboration kind of environment, right?
Yes, I think if you have time and energy and are so inclined, I know that Lauren is taking a first pass at some of the interdependencies that she sees between the goals. You have as much or more familiarity with specific initiatives. So I would be curious to see what your take is. Like, if you just went through the 30 initiatives and you said, I think it's universal that 1.1 is infused in everything, right? So the idea of diverse representation with national resource providers and boards and their management, I think is something that influences every single subsequent goal. But from the other parts, like how 4.4 is connected to. So if you put a little note next to, like, if you were to line them up and say, this one connects with this one, and you don't have to explain why unless you want to, but if you're just sitting around one day and kind of looking at the goals, I'd be curious to have any of you or all of you just put notes next to the goals that you're familiar with and say, wow, that goal, if this team talks to that team, it would be helpful. Does that make sense?
It sounds like a great exercise, and again, would love to be able to find the time to do that, and I will try to do that. Question logistically is, where the heck is that document where they're all listed?
So online it would, or it's in the playbook.
Okay.
So our last playbook, few scant copies. Okay. So
It's in there? Okay.
it's under, if you go under the goals, the initiatives are listed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So
Thank
and
you, Tyler.
that's a little bit more description, huh?
Tyler just did the link to the Google Doc as well.
Oh, okay.
And
I wonder if,
I happen to have it open.
how convenient.
Yes, I thought it was appropriate.
Does it make sense to create like a spreadsheet, or as opposed to a doc?
Well, a spreadsheet in terms of an individual and what goals and initiatives they identify themselves for, because that's
So maybe if it was like
columns.
the spreadsheet. So I don't know. I'm just thinking through this. So I have no.
Okay. Yeah.
So if we put it, yeah. So Katie, explain what your
Put
vision.
all the goals across the top and all the goals, or all the initiatives across the top. So 1.1 to 7 point whatever.
Matrix. Yeah.
Do a matrix. So then do the same thing on the vertical, on the y-axis, and then you could just put X's where they overlap.
Yep.
So I wonder if we did that.
By one, but
Yeah, I wonder if we did that, we could maybe encourage Jeff to create like a Kumu. I don't know if that helps too. No, that would just.
I don't understand those things, but sure.
I think if we show it to Jeff, he might create one just because.
Just because he'll need to do it. Well, he needs them to understand things. He needs them for sure. So
that would be interesting.
I think a spreadsheet's not a bad idea. For each one of the individuals, they'd have to identify themselves. How can I contact you? So now are we adding in an email address, or you know,
I think, okay,
it's just a document to read, not to use to, you know. Just
yeah,
to
I think that the document to read and then adding notes to the page where the canvas sits,
Okay.
right? So on the beta dashboard,
Yeah.
you've got the goal, the definition,
Hmm.
the
Initiative.
videos, right? And then the project canvases.
Mhm.
And then on the project canvases, at least in the dashboard,
Yeah.
we could probably list out, like where, like who's on the thing, because by the time you get to the dashboard, you're really more interested.
You're already in it. Yeah.
Right.
We could do a spreadsheet. I mean, it might benefit to break up this by sheets per goal, you know, so there's not 37 columns to look through on one document. You know, if I'm just on 4, I go down goal 4, and then here's the 5 columns for goal 4, and everybody who's on, you know.
Right, so it'd be like goal 1.1 to 1.3, and then all the other goals down the other side.
Yeah, so there'd be 8 sheets, right? So
Mhm.
1 through
Well,
storytelling.
7 still, because storytelling lives in goal 4. Yes.
Sure.
Storytelling lives in no goal 8. No goal 8.
It's not a goal 8. It's bigger. Anyway, so 8 tabs, and then we would have, yeah, like you said, Katie, we would just have the 4 or 5 for that particular one, that particular goal. Because there is a lot of bleed over internally the goals too. Somebody might want to work on every initiative in goal 4 or every initiative in goal 1 because it's their job.
So one of the things that I'm working on is loading up the project canvas, and the people who signed up that were count me in, I want to lead, I'm interested in being involved. So I'm creating a separate document for that will be accessible to people who are part of the community. So we don't list that because it's got email addresses. We won't necessarily list it in the Facebook page, but we may make it more like accessible in the Slack channel or something like that. So people who have been at least introduced into the community in some way has access. So we're working on the accessibility stuff.
Okay.
Okay. What else? What else helps? What's something else that's needed?
There was a spreadsheet of not the last ESHIP, the prior, on the lead, participate, and that. There was one. I don't know if you're working off of it or if you're starting from scratch, you might be a little ahead of the curve, because there was one that was literally I saw it, and it did have everybody's contact info on it, and I have it somewhere because I kept it.
Yeah. So each of the goals has, those are the Google spreadsheets with 130 initiatives.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. That's the one I
each
saw.
goal had like 20 initiatives, and then it's got everyone's email addresses that were interested.
Yeah.
That was at a time when there was an intern who updated.
No, I know. But it's good raw data, you know, especially to compare against people who might have said something in 2017 and then, you know, weren't there.
And I think that that's important to bring up as people start working on initiatives, that they might see something that has some connectedness with a project that they're working on or a cool project that they'd like to do, because we prioritize 30 doesn't mean that those are the ones that are solely going to get supported for RFPs. 30 just became a good starting point, because trying to introduce the community, especially at the summit, to 130 initiatives was just taxing. So that's why prioritizing 30 just became more doable as a good chunk of, and frankly, a good place to start that was recognized by all of you and other people around. So there are other goals and initiatives that would be great projects, and when the foundation announces that RFP process, those are all open, and it doesn't have to be. Bye, Beth.
No, I'm back.
Oh, okay. No, it doesn't solely have to be the ones that we talked about either. It doesn't have to be any of the 130. Somebody could just be working on something or come up with an idea that they want to submit for the RFP. So the only RFP constraints as so far are, is it sustainable? Is it national? Is it for the field, not local? Right? And then does it solve for one of the 7 goals? So that's very loose, broad things. And then what Christine is working on is the RFP commitments from the national resource providers that will be supporting some of these initiatives. So if
Good luck.
yeah, well, if and I know urban manufacturing is in that conversation because urban manufacturing is an NRP. So if it's a matter of Katie's organization that says, here are some things that we're interested in, we'd like to work on, and we would collaborate, and you would be like the organization that houses and the program, whatever that may be, whatever you and Lee and everybody else geeks out on. So I don't know how that goes.
What were the 3 points for the RFP? Sustainable, national.
Well, so is it field focused, right? Does it help create the field? And then the sustainability part is actually the national resource provider is what we're looking at. And that conversation is changing and shifting, but fine tuning as we go. So, Beth, your question?
Yeah, when will we know which of the NRPs are supportive and interested in which goals and
So,
initiatives?
great question for Christine. I think she's still working on that. It's conversations that she's having with national resource providers, and then there are a myriad of national resource providers that aren't in our purview. If you know of national resource providers, we're starting off with a list that there have been relationships with, right? So because when this whole thing started, there were people in and around the foundation that recognized other organizations that did work around ecosystem building. So they were the ones that were contacted first. It's not that they're the only ones. I mean, there's, and then there's whole big conversation comes to play about how corporations come into this. So I know, one of the national resource providers that has been around, but we don't talk about nearly enough, is GoDaddy. And GoDaddy's been at the conferences, and GoDaddy is interested in being involved. So, so there's that.
Yeah, and I just
Sorry, I got to jump off. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So hopefully that helps. If not, I appreciate your time and energy, and hopefully, I don't know how we did on goal 6, but I think we moved other stuff forward. So
Yes.
I appreciate you. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.